now.
Good day, everybody. Welcome back to another awesome Tuesday. We're happy to bring you our Pivot Ready live discussion. On the call today is me, Wesley, and then Amy, who works in the Brookville Operations Division. So if you haven't been following us, you haven't been watching these lives, you're welcome to go back and see some of the Facebook posts we've made about them. We love sharing information and some of the experiences that we have, with coaching one-on-one clients, with helping, $15 million companies become $60 million companies. We talked through some of the key principles. One of the things we would ask you is, hey, please jump into the comment section. We love answering questions. This is not a formal presentation. This is a conversation environment. So please feel free to ask us any questions. So, Amy, what have we got on the agenda today?
So last week we started kind of I guess you would say, module that we like to follow within our coaching and also our business structure is we kind of start with the mindset, strategy, and tools outline. So last week we talked a little bit about mindset, what that kind of looks like, how we can impact it, and stuff like that. So today I would like to move on to addressing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And as I threw this out, I kind of took a step back earlier, and I was like, well, I'm not even sure that I really know what that means. So to start with, I did go and I looked up the definition, and it was actually very interesting because strategy in the definition of the Webster Dictionary is a military term. But once you got past that, a couple of the definitions that I found were an action taken to attain the goal, a general direction set to achieve the goal, or a guidepost in choosing what to do and how to make decisions for your business. So I think starting there, Wesley, why don't you discuss a little bit about how we kind of use strategy and what it kind of means in our world following mindset?
All right. So, strategy is one of those things that it's people often look at the strategy as, hey, this is going to get me to where I need to go. And as you just clearly defined, it starts by having the mindset of knowing where you're going. What is it that you're trying to achieve? I was in a conversation with a business owner earlier on today. And I mean, I can share my screen and draw a picture, which I like doing as well. So I'll do that in a minute. A lot of people will abandon the vision because the strategy didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what? We might have not won the way that we thought we were going to win. And then they literally abandon the entire mission. They're like, hey, let's just give up. And the history is full of that. Media is full of that. There's a war in Russia and Ukraine currently. So there's the mission on what you're trying to achieve. And then there's different strategies that you employ to get you there. And at a much higher level, one of the things to consider, yes, I'm talking a lot with my hands, I just realized that, is business owners oftentimes forget that the capital that they have and the people in their business are two very specific strategies. So we don't talk about, hey, I have investment capital, I'm going to invest my capital. When we talk strategically, we say, hey, I'm going to deploy capital, because your capital goes out and works for you. And the same is true in your business. When you're looking at bringing in a highly talented individual, one, you have to be able to say, this is talent. But two, what is my strategic application of this talent going to be? How is this talent going to make the business better, make me as a leader better, therefore make everybody in the company's life better? Those who deal with us on the client side, those who've committed on the team side, is not just bringing somebody in to say, hey, here's a bunch of tasks. It's, thinking of a military, it's like, hey, take this box of ammunition and run over there. It doesn't serve a purpose if you're just doing single tasks, you've got to understand bringing people into your organization is you have to be strategic about that, and how do they improve the business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So when you're talking about strategy like that, like I feel like on some level strategy is really ethereal, and on some level strategy is very specific, and you kind of have to find a balance. But I also feel like maybe strategy is the piece of the puzzle that a lot of people forget. Like you mentioned tasks a lot, and I thought, like, a lot of people can say, hey, there's our goal, or hey, like, we're moving in that general direction, and here's the tasks that we're going to do every day. But if you don't put all three pieces of those puzzles together, where you have an overarching strategy, your people are going to run around like little minions without any direction or clarity around how we're getting to that goal. So how do you get clear on what the strategy is while still leaving room to kind of accommodate as you go?
So I always take it back to what is the objective of the mission, and is the success of the mission based on me as a leader, because I am telling A, B, and C who works in my division what to do, or am I bringing people into my division that are actually saying, you know what, we're seeing opportunities. They're looking further ahead. They see where the market is changing. They see where the opportunities are. Those people that have the ability to look down the road and not just complete tasks, for me, is a strategic approach. Is those are the people that I would like to surround myself in my division, in the companies that we own. So those are the people that I feel can add to the strategic approach, as opposed to this, hey, here's a shovel, go dig a ditch, and that's all they do. They don't know why they're digging the ditch. You might be putting up a 12-story building. All they know is, hey, I'm digging a ditch. So the execution then is sacrifice of the success and how successfully they execute it, because they haven't bought into that. So one of the conversations that I had this week with a business owner is people often, as I said earlier, they sacrifice the mission because the strategy failed. And that for me is 100% tied to not knowing your why. Why are you going down this route? Why are you using this plan of attack? Why are you expanding your business? Why are you making this higher? If you're that purposeful in that strategy, you can change the strategy if it doesn't work, but you're not abandoning the mission. So if you look at a person's life, on this side, there's survival in business. I'm holding onto this piece of driftwood in the ocean. I'm surviving. My business is doing what it's doing. I'm getting knocked around by the waves in the markets and people leaving my company and coming in. So even in your personal life, there's this survival mindset. And most people, their mission is to get to thrive. Well, I'm not surviving anymore, I'm thriving. But you can very quickly go back from thrive to survive. And we see this in some of the clients, is some of the lead technicians resign, and all of a sudden the business owner is back in the field. If it's in the wash industry, if it's in the home inspection industry, if it's in the roofing industry, that they all fall victim to the same, I'm thriving, I don't have to work in my business, to I'm back into surviving until I find the next person just to plug the hole. And they're literally sitting there with their finger in the hole. And then they get tired of doing that and they leave. So extrapolate that a little bit further. You've got survive, you've got thrive. Then here, to coin a phrase, it's called you're rich. And not rich in money, but you're rich in abundance of something. Abundance of talent, abundance of money, abundance of resources, abundance of time. Think of somebody that wins the lottery. They go from surviving to being rich. A sports hero or a sports star signs a big contract. They go from surviving right into rich. But they don't know what it takes to be here and to live at this level. For me, there's something beyond that, which is called wealthy. So if you can map the road from survival to thriving to rich, meaning you have more than you need, going into wealth, which means you're now in a position to own your own decisions. You have freedom around time, you have freedom around money. That for me is looking at a model of something like that and then say, okay, what strategies do I have to deploy to get me there? If you're going from surviving to thriving, it's just an action. Yes, you can have a micro strategy, but if that strategy fails, immediately you're going back. If you deploy a bigger strategy to say, well, this is where I'm going, it doesn't matter what happens here because you're not losing focus of that goal further down the line. And I think that's where people oftentimes sacrifice the strategy. Like, well, that didn't work. I'll just go back to, I've made some hiring mistakes. I'm not hiring anybody else. I'll just do it myself. And they never develop the skill set, or they master the skill set around what's it like bringing in talented people into my world. Because if I'm not worried about survival, I'm not just worried about thriving, i.e., I don't have survival complaints. What's beyond that? So the short point to the long story is the wealth component. What you describe as having wealth, that's where you attach your why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because if it's just survive to thrive, that's your why. You're running away from whatever causes you pain. That's your why. But if your why is over here to build something bigger than yourself, I mean, that's Berkflow's logo. Build something worthwhile. Build something bigger than yourself. Build something that influences the lives of other people. That for me is where you start getting strategic around how do I get there. And part of that, and I mean, this is a little bit closer to your stable, is how do we measure that? What are the KPIs that goes from A to B, from B to C, further down the line? And I think a lot of people have little things and they measure around, yes, I've got KPIs around survival. I'm not drowning. Well, that's not a KPI. That is you're surviving. A KPI is something that you can build upon that says ultimately the wealth component to my life, my why, is what I can measure and live up to.
Well, and I think too, when you're talking about strategy, like you were saying, strategy is how to get you from here where you are today to where you want to be. But it has to be more than just the next step. Because I think a lot of times I see people where it's like, okay, my strategy is like, we're going to start measuring KPIs. Well, that's a strategy, but where is that actually taking you? Because once you start measuring them, now that you have nothing after that. So a strategy always has to have the next step past where you're going today so that it can continue to move the ball.
And to that point is, measuring KPIs is not the strategy, it's a tactic of the strategy. It's part of the strategy. It can't be the strategy. The strategy is to get there. We're strategically trying to get from A to D, not, hey, just measure KPIs. Because again, that's a differentiating factor between doing things to keep yourself busy. Even when you look at time management, people have their personal life all planned out. I know your personal life is very structured. You start your day healthy. That's important to you. So if we had to draw two columns, your personal life is very structured. I eat this, I go at this, We take that model and we apply it in the business world, and people are like, well, I get to the office at about 9, I push papers till about 12, and then I line up a couple of meetings that probably doesn't happen in the afternoon. And at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to do it better. Because they have no expectations of what success for that day looks like. And again, that is a tactic as part of the strategy. Tactically, I need to utilize the resources that I have, which is my daily time, allocation in support of the strategy I'm applying to go from here to there.
Well, I think too, it's the success of your team, like you were talking about. Like that just made me think. Um, I am a very structured person, but I also work in multiple businesses, and so there's times where I think my day is going to look like this, and then a fire comes up, and I'm in all these meetings, or I have to go take care of this, or just today, like I had to run to town to drop off a computer charger. Like it's just the random tasks. Well, for me, it becomes very important that my team that I'm working with knows what our strategy is, because we might only meet once a week, or we might only meet for 10 minutes. And so we have those check-ins, but it's they know what the strategy is, and whether I'm present or whether I'm interacting with them, they can keep moving in accordance with the strategy that we've laid out, so that work is not centered around me being the epicenter of what's happening. I think that's really important for all leaders at a lot of levels, because you have the company strategy, and then you have the divisional strategy and your team strategy, and like everybody might have a different strategy because they're working towards a different end goal, but it has to be relayed to your team.
So one thing that I want to talk about when we talk about strategy is, most people will take the failures from yesterday and apply them to tomorrow and say, I just need to do yesterday's failure better. And that might work if you're trying to lose weight. Is maybe don't eat 2 slabs, just eat one. But if you're talking about business, when you talk about strategy, is do you have strategy sessions with your leadership? Because you want their voice as part of it. You want them to contribute. You want them to own. As the CEO, as the leader, the visionary of the company, is you got to go to your leaders and say, okay, what strategy are we going to employ here? What are we doing to get us where we want to go? And in military terms, they might go out, do an operation, come back, but it's part of the bigger strategy. And to your point, if you know what that strategy is, let's use an example. I want to grow my business. So a lot of service-based companies very heavily weighted around servicing, because that's kind of where they originated from, a skill set that the owner potentially has, or an opportunity. They kind of see operations as like, well, that's a 5 to 10 job at night, around the dinner table. I'll do some payments, and I'll send some invoices, and it's easy. It's just like HR stuff. And those have no strategy around the engine that drives their business. Because if you look at service operations and growth, operations is a support role in your business. And it has, in my mind, 2 functions. It supports services to execute, and it supports growth to acquire. So operations for me is the engine. It's the horsepower that drives the business. And so many people put all their focus on the servicing side, the delivery side. So back to the point of the strategy is how we want to grow the business. So we don't necessarily say, hey, this is how we're strategically going to grow it. And they confuse, well, we're going to do this operation. We're going to do this one thing. I'm going to spend $10,000 on Facebook marketing, and my business is going to grow. It's like, well, that's part of growth, but that's not a strategy. That's part of the strategy. Because ultimately, people want to buy from people. They want to buy from the Amy that they spoke with. They want to buy from the company. It's not some fancy just an ad. And you might have built your business based on strong relationships. Do you carry that? Do you carve out time as a CEO to say, I'm expecting my growth person to come with a strategy on growth? And for me, that's where you need to have strategic conversations with your leaders. And again, it's not up to the CEO or the leader to say, here's a strategy. It's up to the leader to go, up to the divisional leader to go to the CEO and say, here's my strategy. I need your backing on it. Then the CEO says, okay, what boulders do I need to move out your way so that this strategy can work? Well, you know what? You maybe have a blind spot around this one thing. Let's tweak it a little bit. Let's go run it. and then come back. But a lot of people, it's either failure to launch in that instance because they don't get to execution stage, or they put all the eggs in one basket and say, this is going to be the be all and end all of our growth division. So back to the topic at hand, how strategic are people around utilizing the operations in their business? If you're just viewing it from the outside as, hey, it's some HR functions, it pays our taxes and unemployment and that type of stuff, that's fine. But you have to understand that you've got a 10-ton truck and you're running it off a 500cc motor, and you that thing's not going to move. And I'm not saying overspend, is you have to focus on how well does the operations, the systems, the processes, the scalability of your operations division support the service, the delivery side, which is servicing, and the acquisition side, which is growth. And again,
well, I think to that point too, oftentimes the strategy of the operations division is dependent on the strategy of the services division or the growth division, because then meeting their goals and how they're going to go about doing that oftentimes dictates what operations needs to do in support of those things. And so if I come to the table and I say, Wesley, this is how you're going to run the growth division, this is like, it's ultimately going to fail because I don't know what you know about growth. I just know how to support you. So you have to bring it to the table to say, this is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. This is where I need your help as the operations division, or for that matter, as the services division, to support that.
And I think, that, and again, I don't want to just talk ethereally about this, because ultimately we want to leave people, with a takeaway that they can say, you know what, I have a fresh perspective on this. Is one of the things that you have to understand when we talk about these things is the communication between these three leaders and their ability to trust one another. And one of the strategies, so firstly you have to identify the problem. Now, going to the doctor, what's wrong? Hey, I have pain right here. Well, you kind of were shot through this arm and then the bullet ended here. So that's why this is not really the problem. The problem was right here. So a lot of people have instances where they go in and try and resolve a problem, but they don't go to the root of the problem. And I know my analogy was kind of wayward, but that's the way my brain works. Is people don't always go to what causes the derailment of the strategy. They go to the symptoms of that. And in based on what we're talking about is service operations and growth, the three divisions, communication is vitally key to the success of the leadership. One of the strategies that you need to deploy in your business is, how do I improve communication? It's not a task, it is a strategy. The same way the strategy is, how do we build brand reputation? How do we build a value proposition to our clients? Those are all different strategies. There are different tactics within those strategies. But a lot of times people look outwardly and say, well, this is what we need to give, without saying, strategically, what do I need to do in my business to strengthen my team? How do I get operations to get the information from the servicing division? What's that feedback loop back to operations to improve systems? Or you know what? We're not responding to how the market is asking us to respond because the growth division is not giving that feedback. So, one of the tactical applications of a strategy is, how do you improve communications in your business?
Yeah, and I think that is a little bit where the CEO is setting those level of strategies. So, okay, so to your point, to get tactical here and give a takeaway, let's talk a little bit about how this looks for us particularly, and how it looks for our coaching clients as far as an annual cadence of how we set up the vision and then how we lay out the strategy, and then how we execute.
So talking about us as, you know, or a client, a coaching client, a consulting client, you know, it all follows the same formula. There's two things that for me is vitally important. One is you have to take stock of where you are, and two, take stock of where you're going. And then knowing where you're going is you can set the trajectory, and a lot of people do that and then they stop. If they even do that, they have these ambitions like, hey, I want to own a multi-million-dollar company. That's great. My first question is why? Why do you want to own a multi-million-dollar company? So, you know, when I have conversations with business owners, it's always around, why is that important to you? Because if they believe internally in the why, we can adopt any strategy in between. You can ask them to commit to whatever strategy in between because they know the why. If you just go in and saying, hey, strategically, we need to change these things, then this will happen. You know, it's difficult for people because you're putting this mountain in front of them and say, hey, when you climb to the top of this mountain, I'm going to show you the vision of how far we can see from there. If you can show them the opportunity, the why they have to be committed, you can ask the strategy to be changed many times because you're still singly focused on the outcome. Then you can go back and say, okay, well, let's see where we're broken, what's not working. And oftentimes, you know, I had a conversation with the business owner is, you can go in and say, I need to do this so that our relationship moves. Or you can say, hey, I've just gone through this exercise to find my why. But I'm actually in business with other people, either my leadership or, you know, partners or something, and we've never had a why conversation. So if we don't know the whys, I'm going to adopt a strategy and I'm not going to have your backing. And all you're going to do is say, hey, I have no idea why you're doing what you're doing. But if you can focus everybody towards, hey, this is why we're doing tougher things. This is why we're changing our marketing. This is why we're improving our servicing. This is why we're putting training systems for our, you know, technicians, our spray wash technicians. Because I might not have a quality control system in my business. So I can go in with a big, thick rule book and say, boom, here's all the quality standards that I need you to adhere to. Or you can say, hey, give me feedback. Well, we feel that we're not getting developed. Okay, cool. Well, why don't I put a training program together? Then I go to measuring the success of that. Then I go to, okay, this is the reward for succeeding in that. As opposed to going with this very corporate mindset of, boom, here's the rules, you know, take it or leave it.
Well, and to add to that too, obviously if you've never had that conversation, do it now. But it's also not a one-time conversation. So that's kind of the where we're at, where we're going conversation is something that we look at the end of each year, but not at the end of the quarter. So we start looking at those kind of conversations early December. What does this look like? Where are we at today? Where do we still want to go? Why are we going there? Those kind of things. And it's a continuous conversation that we're having and we're revisiting each time. So from there, kind of our cadence and what we do from a like strategy has to bend. We don't know what the economy is going to do 6 months from now. We don't know, you know, if the people that are working for us today are going to be working for us 6 months from now. Things happen, life changes, all of those things. So strategy has to be adjustable. So I think from our experience, a really good cadence around that is a quarterly strategy session. We come in every quarter, we kind of plan the quarter out. We take stock of, you know, where we are, what our goals are for the quarter, what that strategy is going to look like to get us. The bigger goal at the end of the year is broken down into quarterly goals. How are we getting to this quarterly goal? And what does that look like today based off of what we have and where we're at? So setting that strategy, that kind of allows for, if you set your strategy on an annual basis, it's a little bit locked in. And then I feel like when things happen and your strategy starts to fall apart, then you go back to just, what am I doing today? What am I doing today? What am I doing today? And it's almost like you start to work backwards then. You no longer see the vision. You no longer see the why. You no longer see how you're getting there. You just start focusing so narrowly on what you're doing today. So I think that's a little bit of our cadence is we do annual meetings. We do quarterly planning meetings. We also do every 2-week check-ins with our ELT. So we're still checking in. We're still talking about what the strategy was. Are we on track? Are we executing? Keeping it at the front of the mind at all times. Do you have anything to add to that? Did I miss anything?
No. I think you summed it up beautifully. I would add to that one, you need to know who you're having those conversations with, and if you've got the right person in that position and you understand the why, then I'll share this. I actually found something that we'll post it in the Facebook group afterwards. It's just a slide that says daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. So if you set your annual goals, then you say, okay, what is our strategy for getting there? Because the annual goal is a strategy of the 5-year goal. And the 5-year goals are a strategy of the 25-year goals. But if you're only readjusting and reassessing every year, you might be off track for the entire year. And there's so many things that we've seen, COVID, the big resignation, the economy changes, interest rate hikes, wars, gas prices. There are things that happen throughout the year where you cannot wait a year to readjust your strategy. Is you need to have those quarterly strategy conversations. And for me, somebody that is successful in that is somebody that can go back and say, okay, what is the strategy for this month? What is the strategy for this week? Okay, what does my daily execution look like? Because it supports the strategy. So strategy for me is not one of those ethereal things that, well, we kind of put it up on a dartboard and say, that's what we hope to achieve this year. The only way you're going to get there is by measuring it in increments. And that way you're going to know, hey, I'm off target or I'm on target. And one of the strategies that we teach clients is how to have these conversations. The conversation is not just going to happen. If you take stock of your business, is there trust? If you look at Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, prime example, you cannot go to self-actualization, to the highest level of performance, if you don't know where the breakdown is, if you can't have healthy conflict, if there isn't trust. So if you look at your business through that model, you can say, okay, strategically, how do I need to improve this? I can't just put up 10 rules of the company, smile when you come in the door, wash your clothes and be on time. It has to be more than that. So strategically, how am I going to influence the people around me? How am I going to help them set a vision? How am I going to be held accountable as a business owner? Because a lot of business owners live on this island called entrepreneurship. Nobody calls them out when they make a mistake. Nobody tells them, hey, you're missing the mark. Hey, nobody tells them you're not in line with the strategy, because it's this mindset of, well, it's my strategy, I can abandon it. It's like, well, if you sink the ship as the captain, the crew goes down with you. So for me, strategy is one of those things that's always top of mind.
Well, and I think to that point too, if you're not a business owner, or you're not a CEO, or you're not an entrepreneur, this still very much applies to you. Because, last week we talked about in mindset, we talked about the gardens of life and how mindset impacts every aspect of your life. So if your strategy, if your goal is, like you said earlier, to lose 20 pounds, you have to set a strategy on how you're going to get there. You can't just wish and hope and wake up one morning and think you're going to lose 20 pounds. Like, it's not going to work. There has to be a strategy in line with that. And so regardless of what level in the company you are, these same applications can take away to any one of those personal gardens or any one of those personal goals that you might have. It's the same concept.
Yeah. And I think, to wrap this up is, for me, having the strategy and having communication and clear expectations around what success of the strategy looks like. A lot of people know, hey, I want to grow my business, but so they can talk at the big level, and then all they do after that is like, well, if I only need to fix this one thing. And it's very often that you will only have just this one problem. And the only way you're going to do that is to say, okay, strategically, this is how I look at this. This is how I measure success. This is how my expectation. This is how I need it to show up. This person comes into my business. This is how I need them to move the needle. Those are strategies around the people, the success, the processes, the outcomes. Then you go into the tactical stuff of, you know what, Amy, you need to lead your team. This is our expectation of your team. Here's the deadlines. This is what success looks like. This is how we review, you know, stuff that you've built, SOPs and back end and that type of stuff. So it does become very tactile after that, but you can't go from 50,000 foot view all the way to the ground. You have to have strategies in between.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
So as we carry this through, like next week, we are going to come back and talk about tools, which is that on the ground, kind of down in the weeds aspect of it as well. And so, if you're watching today or you're watching anytime between now and next week, make sure you come back next week, because we're going to be sharing a few of our really key tools that we use to help businesses grow, help people find talent, and I don't know, whatever else Wesley decides he wants to share before next week.
So yeah, we'll make some of the tools available. One of the things is, how do you develop divisions? How do you classify? How do you get clarity around that? One of the other things is a tool that we have that helps you assess who or where the bottleneck in your business is. One of the biggest misconceptions that we have is, just because I'm in a leadership position, I don't have blind spots, because my title comes with responsibility. And I think actually it works in reverse, where you become so focused on one thing that you negate focusing on some of the blind spots that you have. And the reason why I say this, I see this at a CEO level. Why? Because they say, well, I used to do all this work. I was in conversation with somebody. It's like, well, we've done this the same way for the last 40 years. It's like, great. And they're struggling in instituting a change because they haven't connected why we need to change. So if hey, this is the goalpost, our current efforts are going to take us here, but your expectation is up here, it opens the door for conversation to say, you know what, we need to change strategy here. We need to change some of the tactical stuff that we do. But it starts with having that conversation of what the outcome needs to be. And, I'm excited. For those of you guys that don't know, Brookflow is hosting a Pivot Point event coming up in October. The team will be there. Dirk, the founder, will be talking and training. We're super excited about that. You can check it out on our homepage, brookflow.com. There's a link on there as well. Pivot Point. We're super proud to be able to take this into new industries, to new markets, to get to meet new people. We've got great success stories, but we would much rather hear where your journey is. And the other thing I want to throw out there as well is, if you guys want to have a conversation with us, we offer up complimentary strategy sessions. We don't solve problems. We don't have the answers per se to everything, but we can help you set up that strategy. In a conversation, we can go through some of the things that we do successfully with other clients. We bring a lot of what our clients are successfully currently doing, and we talk about those in the strategy sessions and say, you know what, this is where I think you're coming undone. This is where I feel that you're stuck. So you guys can reach out to us at contact@brookflow.com. We'll gladly set up a complimentary strategy session.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions between now and then, you can holler at us. or leave us a message here on any of the social media platforms. And if not, we will be back next Tuesday at the same time.
All right. Everybody have a great week. Thanks, guys.